All right, welcome to today's lesson on section 4.8, applications of trigonometry. Today we're going to focus in on solving a right triangle. And solving a right triangle basically means to find all the missing lengths of its sides and measurements of its angles. So if you look at a right triangle here, we label it A, B, and C. And angle A, angle B could be either one of the acute angles. C, remember, is always the right angle. And then the sides, little a is always opposite angle A, little b opposite angle B, and C is always the hypotenuse across from angle C, the right angle. So remember, the angles, when we label this, are always capital letters. So it's capital A, capital B, capital C, and remember, C is always the right angle. The sides are lowercase, so you have A, B, and C, and they are across from the angle with the same letter. So when you set it up, if there's no picture, that's how you would set it up. So let's do an example. So for example, if I say angle A is 58 degrees and B, side B is 7, and I want to solve the right triangle. Well, to solve it, first of all, let me fill in what I know. So for example, this is 58 degrees, and then side B is 7. Well, first of all, it would be easy to find angle B, because if you notice, all the angles in a triangle add up to 180, and specifically in a right triangle, the two acute angles add up to 90. So 90 minus 58 would equal 32 degrees. To find side A, I can set up a trig ratio. So notice side A is opposite of 58, and B here, the only one I know, is 7, and that's adjacent. So which trig ratio is opposite over adjacent? The tangent. So I can set up a trig ratio tangent of 58 equals A over 7. And then I can multiply times 7 on both sides. So I get 7 times tangent 58 equals A. And therefore, side A equals approximately 11.2. And then for side C, I could do the Pythagorean theorem, because now, notice I have two of the sides, and I'm just missing the hypotenuse, so I could actually do the Pythagorean theorem, where I could do 7 squared plus 11.2 squared equals C squared. So when I square them and add them together, I get 174.24 equals C squared. And then when I take the square root, I get about 13.2 equals C. And that is how I find all the missing sides and angles. So basically, I had 3 missing parts: angle B 32, side A 11.2, side C 13.2. The next word problem here is about finding the angle of a right triangle. And so the question says, a guy wire is 13.8 yards long. And basically a guy wire is one that if you have a stake in a ground, here's the ground, it basically is put in the ground and it hangs up from a pole. And the pole here so the guy wire is 13.8 yards long. It's attached from the ground to a pole 6.7 yards above. So the pole is 6.7 yards above the ground, and it wants you to find the angle to the nearest tenth of the degree that the wire makes with the ground. So here's the angle that the wire makes with the ground. Remember, going back a little ways, when we find angles using our calculator, we use sine or cosine or tangent inverse. In this case, since we have opposite and hypotenuse, we're going to use, you guessed it, sine inverse. And so we set up sine inverse of 6.7 divided by 13.8. And when we type that in our calculator, we get that is about 29.0 degrees, approximately. Because remember, you got to round to the nearest tenth of a degree. The last word problem here is using two triangles to solve the problem. So this one says you're standing on level ground 800 feet from Mount Rushmore, looking at the sculpture of Abraham Lincoln's face. So basically you're standing on level ground here, and you're 800 feet from Mount Rushmore. So here's Mount Rushmore, big mountain. And here's Lincoln's face. Right up here, there's Lincoln's face. And looking to the top, the angle of elevation is 35 degrees. But looking to the bottom of the sculpture, it's 32 degrees. And notice you're 800 feet from the Mount Rushmore. And basically you want to find the height of the sculpture of Lincoln's face. So basically you're trying to find, let's do a different color here. You're trying to find this amount right here. So basically you can make two triangles. One triangle here happens basically looking to the top of Lincoln's face. So there's two triangles. One from the to the top of his face. So the ground to the top of his face, to the bottom. So to the top of his face, it's a 35-degree angle. You can see to the top here would form this triangle right there. You know it's 800 feet here, so you want to find how tall it is to the top of his face. So basically, you set up a trig ratio here, and you can say, okay, tangent, because you have opposite over adjacent, so tangent 35 equals x over 800, and then multiply by 800. So you get x equals approximately 560.2 when you type that in your calculator. That's to the top of the face. But then you also have the triangle that's made to the bottom of his face, right here. So we'll draw that over here, to the bottom of the face. And that triangle, here's 800. If you want to figure out how tall it is to the bottom of his face, that's x, but the angle of elevation is 32 degrees. So if you do tangent 32 equals x over 800, then multiply by 800, you get 499.9 approximately. So to the bottom of the face is 499.9. To the top of the face here, it's 560.2. So basically, you want to know how tall how big the sculpture is. So basically, you can take and go to the top of the face and subtract it to the bottom of the face. And that'll give you the height of the sculpture. So in this case, 560.2 minus 499.9, and that gives you 60.3 feet. That's the height. That's the height of this sculpture right here. Because we found from the bottom to the top of the face, from the ground to the bottom of the face. But now to figure out the actual height of the face, to figure out the actual height of the face, we subtract the two. The height to the top of the face, the height to the bottom of the face. That will give you the height of the actual face, which is 60.3. All right. Hope you enjoyed the final video for Chapter 4. We'll talk about any questions you have in class. If you want the review sheet for the test on Thursday, it is on our agenda. And any questions, like I said, we'll talk about them tomorrow in class. Have a good evening.